Hey everybody, this is Dream, and today we have a 12-game NFL slate for this weekend. For Sunday's games from the 1 p.m. to 4:30, we have some pretty solid games in this straight. Before I get started, can you guys smash that like and subscribe button? Also, make sure to check out the description and below to find some to join onto the sportsbook on DraftKings and jump in and check out who people in our Discord and stuff are doing. I've got some picks at the end of this video as well, so stay tuned for those. So let's get into our quarterbacks. We'll start with Josh Allen. Josh Allen is playing for the Bills. Now, they have a tough matchup. It's Miami. I think it's going to be a high scoring game. So I do like him a lot here, but he is high risk, high reward. He's also the most expensive quarterback on this slate. Jalen Hurts looks a little bit safer as he's got a good matchup against Washington. He should be able to score a decent amount of fantasy points in this one. He's had a really solid season so far, and I do think he's going to get over 20 to 25 fantasy points in this one. Justin Herbert has been very good this season so far. He's had 3 really solid games. I look for him to have a really solid opportunity to have a big game here. He's also a little bit cheaper. He's got a good matchup here against Las Vegas. It should be a high-scoring game as well. Several touchdowns should be in his potential. Um, and then Tua for Miami. Now he has got a tough matchup against Buffalo, but Miami's scoring a lot of points so far this season. He's had a really solid start to the year with 2 30 fantasy point games. I like his upside in this game. He's also nice and cheap. And then we'll also look at Kirk Cousins from Minnesota. He's one of my favorite plays on the slate, as he's nice and cheap. He's had 3 really solid games to start against tough teams. In fact, he's got an easier matchup here against Carolina. I think a couple of touchdowns at very least are in play. Justin Jefferson obviously going to be very busy in this game as well. So you could also look at a couple other guys on this slate with Joe Burrow being cheap if you think Cincinnati can bounce back here. I also think Stafford has a little upside against Indianapolis, and Russell Wilson against Chicago also in some potential on this one. Let's go and get on our running backs here. We'll start with McCaffrey. Obviously, super expensive, but has a lot of upside. He's had some really solid games to start with a touchdown in each game. He obviously needs a touchdown and to get over 75 or 80 yards to really pay off here, but he's capable of that. Tony Pollard also in play for Dallas. He's also pretty expensive, but he's getting a pretty good start to the season. He didn't have touchdowns in the second and third game, but he's still scoring decent fantasy points, though his prices come up. So he's going to be harder to roster. Josh Jacobs also in play for Las Vegas. Price is a little bit better than some of the other guys, but he hasn't been very good so far. He does really need to score a touchdown to pay off here, but he's got a good matchup, and so he's definitely got the capability in this one. Hopefully this will be his best game of the year so far. Then we'll look at Derrick Henry, also in play against Cincinnati. He's going to have a tough game here. He's been up and down so far this season, but he has a lot of potential in this one. Then I got 2 value guys I really like a lot. Kyrene Williams for the Rams. He's got a good matchup here against Indiana, and he's done a really solid start to the season with 3 touchdowns in the first couple games. He's also getting some targets through the air. That's going to give him a lot of potential in this one, especially in a plus matchup defensively, where he should have some utility. And then Zach Moss for for Indianapolis. He's got a good opportunity here. He's had a really good start to the season. In his 2 games he's played, he's got 210 yards and 2 touchdowns. If he can continue that, then today against Sunday against the Rams, he's gonna have some utility to be a big player on this slate. I do think that game stays pretty close, and he has some nice upside as a result. Moving to wide receivers, Justin Jefferson and Tyreek Hill are the top 2 guys. They are facing each other, so whichever team, or sorry, they're not facing each other. I'm sorry. Minnesota's playing Carolina, and Miami's playing Buffalo. Both these guys have a lot of upside in these games, and they have a lot of potential, though they are very expensive and hard to roster as a result. Keenan Allen for the Chargers is a great option today. He's had some really big games so far this season. He's got multi-touchdown potential as well. He's been getting lots of yards, though, so I do like his potential here. He had 20 targets in the last game. I don't expect him to get that many targets, but I think 10 or so is definitely in play, and he should definitely be able to pay off on this one. Diggs is also in play for Buffalo. He's a little pricey too, but he's been really solid to start the season with 200-yard games. I look for him to have another big game here in this game, which should be high scoring. Then we'll look at Jamar Chase for Cincinnati. If Burrow can get out from under himself, the last game, Chase had a really solid game with 141 yards. I look for him to have another big game now that he seems like he's getting going. This team should eventually wake up as they have all the talent. So then we'll look at Nakua for, sorry if I'm butchering your name, for the Rams. He looks really good this week. He has some potential here, and I like the Rams against Indianapolis in this game. He should be able to get over 15 fantasy points and hopefully score a touchdown. A.J. Brown for Philly is in play. I really like Philadelphia a lot most weeks, and he's one of my favorite plays on their team. He hadn't even scored a touchdown yet this week, but he's still got some good potential. His price has come down a little. Well, his price is about the same as it's been so far this season. Obviously, if he starts scoring touchdowns, it'll spike up. Then we'll look at Chris Olave for, oopsie, Olave for New Orleans. Now he's nicely priced here. He's had some really solid games to start. Again, no touchdowns here, but he does have 3 straight really good games. He's getting plenty of targets. He's gonna have a lot of utility to have a solid game here. Jacoby Myers is kind of a risky play for Las Vegas, but he's a contrarian option. He's had 2 really solid games so far in the games he's played. He also scored 2 touchdowns, so he has some utility and a plus matchup with a high-scoring game. Then we'll look at Pittman for Indianapolis. He's obviously been a guy that's been targeted quite a bit in the first 3 games. If he can score a touchdown, he'll really pay off here and get over 20 fantasy points. But he's nice and cheap, and that gives him some utility. T. Higgins is also in play for Cincinnati. He's been up and down so far this season. His first game, he's had 8 targets in every game at least, but he's only had 1 game where he's had a really good one. He does need to score some touchdowns to pay off here, but he's definitely capable in this matchup. Then we'll look at Cooper for Cleveland. I do think Cleveland is in a pretty interesting spot here. He's been a lot of targets and had some good games, though he does need to kind of score a touchdown to really pay off here. He is capable of that, though, and has a nice matchup. Pickens for Pittsburgh is kind of a high risk, high reward play. He hasn't got the targets in every game, but he definitely has some potential for yards. If he can score a touchdown, he can pay off at this reduced price. Then we'll look at Sutton. For Denver. He's also in play here. He is an interesting option today as he's had a lot of targets so far this season. He's also managed 2 touchdowns, and he's been over 10 fantasy points in every game. He has some nice utility, but I do think Chicago is a tough team here. I think this is going to be a lower scoring game, and that will give him some utility, but he does need to score a touchdown. Then we'll look at Tutu Atwell. He's been up and down so far this season, but he's scoring over 15 fantasy points in all 3 games. He's just had some drops, and that's been a concern, but he is capable of a 100-yard game or at least a touchdown, and so I do think that gives him some viability. Maybe in our tight ends here, we have a few guys to consider. Obviously, Hawkinson and Andrews are the top 2 overall guys. Now, Andrews does have a tough matchup, but Hawkinson is a great option on this slate if you can afford him, though he's fairly expensive. George Kittle is in play as well. Though he hadn't scored a touchdown yet this season, he does definitely has a good game here to potentially do it in. They're scoring points, so this is a matter of him getting the right situation. Godert for Philly is also in play. He's a pretty solid target the last 2 games. He hadn't scored a touchdown yet, but if he can score a touchdown, he'll pay off at this nice reduced price. And then Pat Freiermuth for Pittsburgh is in play. He's not had a ton of targets yet this season, but he does tend to get touchdowns. He's a red zone use guy, and so if he can get that red zone position here, he'll have a nice utility. Then we'll look at our defensive options. Obviously, the Eagles are top play here against Washington. They should be able to do a lot against them. They've had some good games so far this year. I like their upside. 49ers then play here against Arizona. I also think that's a pretty solid slate. Only Arizona's run the ball pretty good so far this season. I do think that the 49ers are going to have some utility to get some interceptions in this one. And the Cowboys and Steelers are both in play as well, as the Cowboys have had really solid defense so far this season with the exception of the third game, but they lost one of their players. The Steelers, meanwhile, have some nice utility here against Houston, and even though Houston's been good through the air, they've been terrible against the run. So my bets for this slate, let me pull this over here and show you these, are going to be Minnesota -4 against Carolina, Chicago Bears +3.5 versus Denver, and then Seattle, which is the Monday night game, -1 versus the Giants. I also have some picks from some of the guys in Discord. Nelson has picked Colts +1, the Titans +2.5, the Jaguars -3, and the Browns -2.5. And then Bayou Beast has selected Baltimore over Cleveland, Houston over Pittsburgh, New England over Dallas, and New York Giants over Seattle, and that would be money lines. So interesting bets here for some of the guys in Discord. If you want your name in the video next week, feel free to join Discord and drop some picks as the week progresses. I'll try to shout you guys out. Thank you guys for joining Discord as well. I really do appreciate it. With that said, this should be an interesting, fun slate. It should be high scoring as well, so should be a good weekend. If you have any comments below, feel free to leave those. Make sure to tell me what bets you like on DraftKings Sportsbook, and have a nice day, guys.